Good morning, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Storytime with Nick. Today's story is entitled The Chaos of Moving. So, this story is going to cover our move into this house. We've lived here since April of 2014. In December 2013, we sort of started genuinely looking at places. Two places in particular. The place down the road from us, which featured that really weird setup that I talked about in another story. Links in the description. There were some other places here and there. We actually looked at some weird house a couple towns over too. I'm not sure what was up with that. But, so we ended up going with here in the end. And we started the process basically as soon as we signed the papers in January of 2014. So January to April was sort of the setup period where we wanted to get all these things ready. The old owners of this house had already moved out by the time we were looking at it. So the house was staged. They staged it very nicely, by the way. But by the time that we had gotten here, or we had looked at this place rather, the old owners were gone. And we ended up making our pick. So to get rid of the old house, of course, we had to have it inspected, and we all know how that inspection went. We still don't know where the deck is, by the way. We've been looking at that for about 7 years now. We have no idea where that deck is. We simply cannot find it, and inspection will not allow us to sell the house. Actually, they did, because we claimed that our inspector was retarded, and we got a new one who passed us, because that inspector understood that if the deck is not there, there's no need to note that. There's no need to look for a deck that's not there. Period. So, we had that house inspected. We also needed to put up a rail for the stairs between the attic and the second floor because that was some kind of child safety hazard or something. I went up those stairs at least 1,000,000 times. I never fell and hit my head once. Well, then again, I wasn't stupid and looking at my phone while I walked up the stairs. I didn't even have a phone at the time. The most advanced thing my mother had was a fucking BlackBerry with a sliding keyboard. So, you can tell where we were at that time. So, we had to get the house inspected, and we did. And eventually the house passed inspection, and we were cleared to sell it. While we were doing that, we were in the process of, we found a good mover, and we readied our stuff to come. We'd actually started sending some stuff over in advance, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ahead, and we started arranging it here. We made many trips to this place through April. March I mean. January and February were the setup and the clearing of the old house. March. I cannot speak today. I'm sorry, folks. So March was the transition from the old house into here. It was the major setup. And I remember we met one of our neighbors at that point, too, while we were bringing some clothes over. Her name was Vicky, and she was Filipino. And she ended up moving back to the Philippines, after she retired, before the whole pandemic thing went on. And she's actually come to visit a couple times since. Right now, her daughter owns her apartment, and she lives there with her boyfriend. And they have a dog who barks. Not a lot like Isaac 24's dog, but still a barking dog who's actually very friendly, might I add. So, in March, I remember a friend of my mother, one of her old co-workers, his name was Gary, he was helping us move some stuff in. And he ended up being a very nice guy. I had met him a few times here and there, but this is sort of the most time I'd actually spent with him. And he was very nice about it. He helped us get, I forget what he helped us get. I think he helped us move in some old shelves that we ended up not using at all. Well, except for 2 of them, which are right next to me over here. Let me actually show you those. Those 2 shelves right there, those came from our old house. Those were some of the bigger things that we decided to keep. There were a bunch of other things that we decided not to keep, and I'll touch on that later. But he helped us move in stuff like that. He helped us move in some other stuff. And he had helped us move this table where I'm actually recording this at now. And by mid-March, we had actually gotten most of the stuff that we needed here. And then April rolls around. We're more or less ready to just move in. What we had Verizon come on the day we moved in. We had someone else come in, and we had someone else come in. I forget what the other two were, but they weren't as important, but they did show up, and they did meet their deadlines, and they did have this place up and running, but Verizon did not. Verizon decided to cancel their appointment to have the internet and the TV hooked up to us at the very last second. They said, no, we'll do it the next day. And they ended up pushing that back from 10 to about 3 when that appointment was supposed to be. So that was kind of them fucking us over on that end. So April comes around. This day specifically was April 3rd. I don't know how I remember that, but I just do. April 3rd, 2014. So the movers come, and I have to go to school that day, and I'm sad because I wanted to see them actually move this stuff over. I'm not sure why, but such was. So the move was successful, and we got everything. And for the first couple of days, everything was actually stacked here in the living room where you've actually seen me record most of the other stories. Right now I'm sitting at the dining table just because it's a little bit of a mess over there, because my mother's just moving some stuff around. When is she not? But that was actually where we stacked up most of the stuff from the old house for the first couple days, and then it became a couple weeks, and we started moving some stuff around. You see where those wine bottles are behind me? Those sit on this little red side table. Well, this big one, this display table. I'm not sure what it's called, but it actually used to be here, right next to the dining table. And the dining table, instead of facing this way, actually used to face this way. And we also had some different sofas, because the old sofas from the old house, they were kind of a bit aged. And they also had a giant hole ripped in them in the bottom. Because in the old days when we had Kitty, she liked to do that. So we got new sofas, and it turns out they sucked because they were a lot bigger than we expected, and it was kind of a mess to deal with them at first. We ended up moving one to my mother's room as her chair because we simply did not have the space. This was one of those like wraparound sofas that you'd sort of have in like a corner of a really big living room, but this room just was not as big. It just could not fit them. So we ended up having to do that. What else? On the first day, I remember we had woken up really early, or the first night rather. We both woke up really early. It was her that woke up, and then me, around like 3 in the morning. And by then, the fridge was super empty, and we just decided to have some Coke. Not sure why. I'm not talking about Coke, I'm talking about Coke. The drinky stuff. And it was pretty cool. And that was actually the first time I'd gotten to see these under-cabinet lights that we have in the kitchen. So, day 2 rolls around, and how could I forget? Moon. We had to get her here, too. Coaxing her into this little animal cage was kind of a bit of a challenge, but we ended up getting her in there. And it was about a 3-minute drive from there to here. She was a little tense because, hey, this is, where am I? Type stuff. But we got her here, and she started exploring the place, and within a couple hours, she was actually mostly settled in. She knew where her litter box was, she knew where her food was, we fed her, and she was more or less settled in by the end of the day. So day 2 rolls around, and like I mentioned, Verizon comes, and they finally get our TV and our internet hooked up. Hallelujah. And my mother goes out, she gets some food. She has actually decided to take the week off from work because she really wanted to focus on getting this place set up. So she went out, bought a shit ton of food from Stop and Shit, of course, and paid way too much for it because at that point we didn't have Costco. But also Costco, you can either buy nothing for too much, or you can buy too much for too much. Pick your poison. So she went out there, she bought what we needed, and it looked like shit was moving along pretty nicely. I remember also, just as a side note, the day before we moved, we had no beds. What I mean, it was just mattresses. Our bed frames were already brought here, so we were literally just sleeping on the floor. My mother, she also had her lamps on the floor because her nightstands were moved here too. That was just a little side note there. So, the first week comes and goes, and it looks like we're mostly settled in, and then we get really, really, really fucking sick. And I'm talking about a really fucking bad flu that I get too. I'm just sitting in my bed over here like, I hate this. This is a very bad flu. And it kind of came towards the end of my mother's vacation. This happened on the weekend. We were sick for that entire weekend. By the end of the weekend, we were better for the most part, and I was able to go back to school, and she was able to go back to work just fine. Because that was when she needed to go back to work anyway. But, so, the first couple weeks go by pretty fine, and then something funny happens. The fire alarms in the building go off because someone had tried to shove a fucking carpet down the trash chute. Yes, let me repeat that. Somebody tried to shove a carpet down the trash chute. Some stupid people live here, let me just say that. So, that was the first couple weeks. And ever since then, we have been fine-tuning the place. Of course, the place is in no way complete. There's always going to be something you want to add on or take away. But I'd say for the most part, it's about where we need it. We had to make a lot of choices in the beginning to move stuff around. We had ended up getting new carpets, too, for this place. Not very soon after we moved. We had actually gotten new carpets in about 2016, because the carpets here were from 2006. So they were pushing 10 years old at the time, so they were not where they should have been. We decided to get the same color carpet for my mother's room, which was this hazy gold, and then we'd actually decided to switch mine from this weird shade of green to just light blue. And that's where they are now. The carpets are still in very good condition for being 6 years old, almost, I think, something along those lines. Actually, I think 5 years old now. Yeah, closer to 5, because those carpets got replaced in the summer. But any other notable occurrences I want to add to this video? Oh yeah, within the first 2 months, oddly enough, there was a bit of a leak in the hallway. What had happened was, the people who lived upstairs from us, I'm not talking about this Dick Indian couple that live there now that have no fucking manners whatsoever. I'm talking this nice Spanish old couple. What happened was the AC condensate drain on the boiler, or the AC rather, was clogged. So when it went to drain, it would actually overfill, and that eventually started leaking into our hallway. And we were like, what the fuck is going on? We just moved. Is the leak really following us around? Because that old house had a leak. And I'm going to talk about that in the next story, oddly enough. So we were like, God, not this shit again. But we went up there, we got that sorted out. That couple was extremely, extremely nice. They came down right away, they assessed the damage. They were like, we know a guy. They called him up, and he came over in like an hour. And he said, I can fix this right away. And they were nice enough to where they actually decided to foot the bill for us. Such a sweet couple, let me add. So that project was done in about 3 weeks. It was kind of a process of getting the old shit ripped out and putting some new shit in. It was not like a set it and forget it type thing. He had to come back a few times to plaster over it a few times, and then he ended up painting it right after he replaced it, right after he ripped the old stuff out. It was kind of a process, but he got it all done. And when all the work was said and done, he sent the bill upstairs to the old couple. And when that bill was sent over, they came down and visited us, and they said, sorry for the inconvenience. I just hope this doesn't make you think less of us or something like that. And we were like, no, of course not. You guys were super sweet the whole entire time. You guys even offered to foot the bill for us. So that was very nice of you. So they ended up moving out, and now we have this jerk Indian couple who, might I add, their kid, well, I believe it was their kid, might have fucked around in the bathtub too much, and he ended up overflowing the thing because water came in down our bathroom, and we've had some issues with that, but those issues were resolved in time. But let's just say there was a lot of problems, and those people were never confronted because we know we're not going to fucking confront those people because they're assholes. The woman, she pays no attention to you. And she's basically training the kid to be an antisocial to literally anyone who is anyone. And the father, he's a total asshole. We were in the gym. This building has a gym, might I add. And we were in there just doing our thing. And I know he likes to go in there. This was before the pandemic and that. So he comes in there and he's like, "Are you done yet?" And we're like, yeah, we're just finishing up right now. And he's so rude. And he just has this angry expression on his face. He starts exercising, but he looks pissed off about it. He's like, "Mm." And then we leave. And then I could actually see his expression change. He was like, it was kind of this expression of, finally, I thought they'd never leave. Some people here are nice, some others not so much. We've had to deal with the lady downstairs. We've had to deal with these assholes upstairs. We've had to deal with some stupid people who live here. Recently, one of our neighbors has been causing a bit of a disturbance who lives on the first floor. He's been acting kind of delusional. And some other shit like that. That's a story I'll tell one of these other days, but not so much now because this is really just about our process with the move. And the only reason I brought up the Indian couple and the lady downstairs was because they were super nice. When the Spanish couple lived here, them not so much. That lady's never really been nice. But as far as that goes, we more or less had no problem getting settled in. And we've been living here for 7 years now. 7.5 years, I think it'll be soon. Yeah. Man, it's been a long time. I've lived in this place almost as long as I lived in my old house, which was 9 years. 9 years, and we've lived here 7.5 years, so yeah. I've grown used to this place and all its little changes here and there. I know my mother likes to change stuff up a lot. I go through some pictures every now and again, even just pictures from like 2-3 years ago. The place looks pretty different. Well, not very different, but you get the idea. But yeah, that just about wraps up this story time of the chaos of moving with Nick. So, thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoyed.